was trying to find good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever the case. I'm sorry. I should have Edwin, I totally fumbled the start.
That's okay. Welcome to God Squad with Mike S. Miller and a special guest, Edwin, joining you from rural North Carolina, tobacco country.
The great beyond. What is up, Total Excellence? What's up, Ixie5? And hello, Amy Lester and Grantish Cosby. Is this physical or spiritual hygiene? Okay, so the topic du jour, because somebody, this is a topic because I was kind of going back and forth with somebody in the comment section about just kind of answering his questions about his denial of the Bible and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, it doesn't say anything about hygiene. And I'm like, bro, like literally that's what most of the Levitical laws are about.
Sure.
So I thought I would bring up some Leviticus. Always the most exciting book in the Bible.
This is kind of funny because I've been studying the Ramban, if you're familiar with Maimonides, and I've been reading through the Mishnah, which is the oral Torah.
Really?
And so I've actually been, I just want to understand some of the underlying philosophical things that may be underpinning how we view each other, because we don't necessarily view each other the same way.
No, we are all
a huge part of Mishnah or the oral Torah, though, is actually hygienic stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of his arguments was about how an infinite being cannot communicate perfectly with finite humans, and so language isn't a good enough transmitter of information for us to understand fully what a God would want, and therefore the God is trying him trying to speak to us through language is imperfect. And so it's either an imperfect God or I don't know. The argument was kind of gobbledygooky to me. Not to insult the dude or anything. It just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, yeah, because I agree. We are finite beings with finite minds, and God is the infinite, and we cannot absolutely understand anything or everything that he has to say, but we can understand what he does give us to say in his word, and therefore his word itself says we shall know as we are known when we are, glorified. And it's like, okay.
Well, roll your statement back about 30 seconds. What did you, without meaning to be dismissive or derisive of the commenter, how did you categorize his speech? There was a word you used.
He's not an idiot.
No, but you said gobbledygook, right?
Oh, just yeah.
And so maybe you felt like it wasn't well articulated, and maybe he wasn't expressing whatever his point was in intelligible fashion. And I think inadvertently you've put your finger on a lot of the problem. When we talk to each others about God, we often garble the message. And so the things that we ascribe to as a fault of God or a failure of God are not God's at all. It is a fault or a failure of men to speak to each other clearly and with conviction and in a way that can be heard and understood and appreciated.
Bet. Yeah. Agreed. It might be because we're finite mind with subjective thoughts and experiences.
Yes. Yes, we are imperfect vessels.
Weird.
That's okay. That's okay. God has use for flawed vessels too.
Yeah. Truth. Apologies to everyone that I did not get 2 cross-examinations yesterday, and I'll probably do a catch-up stream on the chapter that I missed on Monday, but yeah, it was just some of these days are just filled with stuff that I don't have time to deal
Well,
with.
you've got your. How many projects do you have your fingers in now? Because you're drawing. You're drawing your scriptural project.
No, I'm done with that.
Okay, you're done with that. You're also a team member of Squid Grow.
Yeah, that was what took a lot of my time yesterday. And so other than that, just doing this book with John Delarose. I can
Top
show you.
Grift, right?
Yeah, Top Grift.
So you're doing the interior art. Is that cover yours or is that someone else's cover?
One of the covers is mine. Yeah. Hold on. You want me? I know John's not going to want me to show pages, but
Yeah, you should anyway. He's not
yeah,
here.
I should anyways. I don't care what John says. He ain't the boss of me. So here's a where am I? Present screen.
Now, are you going to letter it also, or is there another letter?
No. I'm doing as little work on this as possible.
Well, it is Top Grift. I mean,
It is Top Grift.
that is thematic.
Yeah. And so with the main character, I get pretty cartoony with him just because it's fun to draw sort of cartoonish. But yeah, this is him sneaking up to the main grift guy's compound.
Nice.
And, dropping down like Spider-Man.
I actually like when you draw in a stripped down style because you capture when you strip down to the basics, you are very good at capturing motion. I remember one day I was messing with you on some live drawing stream, and I think I challenged you to draw like Lone Star in like 60 seconds or something. It was amazing. It was a great composition, and the simplicity of it had a lot of energy. So I actually like seeing, even though you can be Mr. Detail, I do like the stripped down versions you do. I think
it's funny because it really kind of goes against my grain. Because I love detail, right?
Right.
So it's like.
But you get it all. This is great sequential art, right? And he looks sneaky, and then you capture a little bit of that McFarlane thing as he's dropped down from the gate.
If the spider bit the bad guy from the I'll show you another page just because I like the facial expressions. So this is page 10.
This reminds me, what was that nerdy comic strip series you did? The web comic you did. I can't remember the name of it.
Electronic Tigers.
This reminds me of Electronic Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, basically this is Ron's face. Because he had the same glasses and the same head shape, but I threw the big weird curly hair thing on top of him, and but yeah, that's kind of a go-to.
Now, is he conniving some manosphere plan, or is he arguing with someone on Twitter?
He's conniving a manosphere plan. Anywho,
sorry to derail us, but those are great pages, Mike. Well done.
Thank you. All right, let's get to Leviticus. And again, we're not doing really a Bible study. I just wanted to go through here and show it's like, look, one of the things that brought me to an understanding that the Bible was written from outside of human experience was that I know what the hygienic laws were, or that they found, and I wish I could find this actual papyrus. I don't even look for it. I just remember seeing it one time. The medical treatments in Egypt, roughly around the time of Moses, maybe even after Moses. I'm not sure. It could have been after, meaning that they should have been more advanced at the time. Was to use urine and feces as human feces, by the way, for the healing of things like pustules and boils and gashes in the human in your flesh. They thought it was a good idea to rub feces in it. I can't remember if they had any reasoning, but this was part of a medical prescription, which in the modern context you would say, ew, don't do that.
Ew. Ew. Yuck.
That's
Yuck.
not wise.
Yuck.
Well, on top of
I'm Scatman MD,
and streptococcal and all the germs that'll probably cause you infections and whatnot.
Yeah.
I mean, urine is sterile.
2 doctors, 1 cup does not sound medically
all right. That's
inviting.
That's going
sound.
That's going a little.
Yeah. Scatological.
But in the Bible, there are myriad what you would call medical foreknowledge, like stuff that they wouldn't have known. And this is the guy. So the argument I'm having with this guy is like, it doesn't talk about hygiene. And I'm like, bro, it like legitimately, without using the word hygiene, like the word for hygiene, in the Old Testament is clean. Right?
Right.
You are clean. If you are unclean, you are unhygienic. Right? So it's like there's these concepts in the Old Testament, and he's like, oh, well, why couldn't the I'm sorry. I'm gonna say this in a mocking tone. I don't mean to belittle the guy's thought processes, but he's like, why couldn't God just tell them that if you raise pigs in a hygienic circumstance, like a sterile room, if you raise pigs in a sterile environment, they won't have parasites?
Well, in that environment, almost impossible. Almost impossible.
Right.
Yeah, in a pre-industrial civilization.
Yeah. So my point is, like, look, clean animals. The Bible breaks up animals into clean and unclean animals. Clean animals, basically, you can eat a clean animal raw. I don't know if you want to,
but you
right?
can.
But you can. You can eat a clean animal raw, and there's no tapeworms and parasites and all that kind of stuff in the meat of the animal. They might be in their intestinal tracts. Don't eat that.
Yeah. Pass on the chitlins. Pass on the chitlins.
You can eat clean fish. The way the Bible describes clean fish versus unclean fish, which is fish with scales in the whatever, you can eat them and you don't have to worry about parasites. However, don't eat catfish raw.
No.
Don't eat shellfish. And I know we do, because we like to play, because, they're delicious. But don't eat shellfish raw, right? Don't eat, where flesh-eating bacteria comes from, right? It comes from oysters grown in warm water. I believe the Mediterranean is warm water.
Yes.
Right? So, flesh-eating bacteria is a bad thing.
And I can only imagine at the time too, with no modern sewage systems, anyone living near the sea, there must have been, every time it rained, there must have been quite a bit of untreated sewage just being washed into the sea. Right.
Oh, here's an interesting point. Grant says, and they'd still be unhealthy compared to lean meats. Here's an interesting thing. Another Levitical law, when you kill the meat, you're supposed to cut the fat off and offer it as a sacrifice to God.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the fat is the most delicious part, you're supposed to sacrifice it to the Lord.
I've been staring at Leviticus here for a while. I think when we're looking at this, second verse here, where it says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when any man hath a running issue out of his flesh, I interpret that to mean like pus or some sort of infection coming out of his, because of his issue, he is unclean.
Yep. And this shall be his uncleanness in his issue, whether his flesh run with the issue or his flesh be stopped from the issue, clotted or
bandaged.
Stopped. It is his uncleanliness. Every bed, wherever he laid, has an issue. It is unclean. And everything that he sat on is unclean, right? It's like, so what is it? You could put this up, reword it in modern English and put it in a hospital as directions how to deal with people, right? How to be sterile, how to make sure you're not spreading whatever the disease is. This is how they ended the Black Plague.
This is a protocol for infection control. I mean, and you really see it. You really see it. Number 5, starting in number 5.
Right. Go ahead.
And whosoever toucheth its bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. So there's a pause. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that pause is a ritual significance. That pause is to see if that guy gets sick too.
Also, it's bacteria. It wouldn't survive outside for extended periods of time. So if you wash off and then you're like, you don't infect yourself, I guess, then it gives that bacteria time to die. Oxygen kills bacteria.
So transmission by blood or skin contact, it talks about there. And then coming into 7, and he that toucheth the flesh of him that have the issue shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until evening. And if he that hath the issue spit, and that doesn't even necessarily have to be like a deliberate thing, but like a cough, or so forth. I think people would understand how to read that.
Right.
And if he that have the issue spit upon him that is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean into the evening.
Yeah.
And saddle whosoever he rideth. So if he rides on a horse with a saddle, upon that half the issue shall be unclean. So the saddle shall need to be clean. And whosoever toucheth.
Edwin, or does this sound like rules for hygiene?
Yeah, hygiene and sanitation. Yeah. And whosoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening, and he that beareth any of those shall wash his clothes. Some of this actually kind of reminds me of the decontamination procedure for like doing asbestos work.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like you wear the clothes and you either wash them or you dispose of them, and you have to go through a process. And whosoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening. And
hold on, let me make a funny point here.
Okay.
So about 100 years ago, give or take, there was a doctor who noticed that so it was not medical procedure. Oh, even just like 100 something years ago. I can't remember exactly what the date was. But this doctor noticed that if he washed his hands between patients and he was going from operation or autopsy to childbirth, whatever, he noticed that if he washed his hands between patients, fewer of his patients would die. It's funny that if he had just read Leviticus, he would have had this idea that it's like, if you've got an issue from one patient, whatever that issue is, go and wash yourself and be clean before you get to another person. This guy was laughed out of the medical field. This guy was mocked and derided, and I think it was like 20 to 40 years later, other doctors started trying this crazy Levitical practice of washing themselves between patients and therefore saving all kinds of lives. So yeah, maybe it was 19th century. I don't remember the exact date. Somebody could look it up, but that's absolutely true. And here you are 3,500 years ago with some nomads roaming around the desert with freaking hygienic protocols that superseded, Western medicine by 3,000 years.
And here's the ironic twist. The name of the medical professional that mocked that doctor and ran him out of the medical industry was named Stephen Tenaple, and he was actually Doug's great-great-grandfather.
And the Tenaples are just hardcore about just not washing their hands. So, yeah. All right, go ahead.
Little inside joke there. Let's see. Sorry about that, gang.
By the way, do like, subscribe, and share. And I did not put the link to make everybody go to Unapologetic American, but if you want to gather over there, I could actually let me do that while you're reading.
Yeah, I'll start back with 12. And the vessel of earth, this would be like a clay pot, a vessel of earth, that he touches with half the issue shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. And when he that hath an issue is cleansed of the issue, then he shall number himself to 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes and bathe his flesh in running water, and shall be clean. And so 7 days after you're no longer symptomatic is a fairly kind of safe period of time to make sure you're no longer contagious. And on the 8th day, now here we get into sacrifices or sin offerings.
Okay, hold
on the 8th
I just
day,
pinned the message in Blacklist Universe. Join us over on the other channel to join the squad and chit chat. So, but yeah, that stupid. The vessel of earth he touches with half the issue shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed with water. Yeah. So he's not saying, because you can somehow or another, I've heard this before, that wood itself is antibacterial. What? No, I'm good. Thank you.
With wood could be cleaned with lye soap, and I think here the vessel of earth they're talking about is not like a ceramic pot we would think of, but more like a rougher kind of glazing. Terracotta pot.
Yeah, glazing wasn't invented back then. It was just clay.
Well, your people might have had it. When did?
Actually, you know who had it? Sodom and Gomorrah. But they only had it for a brief moment.
Well, I wasn't going in the direction of sodomy. I was thinking more of the Orientals.
No, but you know about that thing with the heat flash, right? Where they found the clay in Sodom.
Okay, well, yeah, that probably created some ceramic.
Right. That's how they know it was. That's how they know it's Sodom and Gomorrah. They found, clay
the
pots.
Vitrified remains.
well, one side of the clay artifacts were glazed, and they're like, "Oh, this screws up our whole thing," because glazing wasn't invented for like another 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And then they looked at the other side, and it was not glazed. And then they sent it into this lab, and they're like, "Oh, that's I can't remember what they call it, a particular type of glazing that only happens when you superheat something over 4,000 degrees in a flash, sort of like an atomic bomb."
Fireblazed, yeah.
Alrighty then.
Yes, invented both high temperature ceramics and salt curing at the same time.
Yeah.
A bunch of innovations happened at Sodom and Gomorrah.
All right. So, did you want to skip past?
These are offerings. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So we've got and then 16. We'll do this with reverence.
Ooh.
And if any man's seed of copulation go out from him, then he shall wash all his flesh in water and be unclean until the evening. And every garment and every skin wherein is the seed of copulation shall be washed.
You don't just leave it under your bed.
No. Yeah. Soap and water. Yeah, don't be See, I was trying to do this with reference. But because I said copulation, Mike all of a sudden became a 13-year-old.
I had a sock of copulation.
The sock of copulation. All right, let's start this again from the beginning as mature adults.
Okay.
And if any man's seed of copulation shall go out from him, then he shall wash all his flesh in water and be unclean until the evening. And every garment and every skin whereon is the seed of copulation shall be washed with water and be unclean until the evening. The woman also with whom a man shall lie with seed of copulation, they shall both bathe themselves in water and be unclean until the evening.
A lot of bathing going on here.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Sure is.
You know, it's funny. It's funny because people will be one of the arguments of the dude was like, can you believe that they called they say a woman is unclean when she's on her period? And I'm like, she's literally bleeding into a rag. It's not the most sterile of environments. It's like,
yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, nobody mentions this part. Nobody says, oh, but look at this. It's like, no, it's just about the woman on her period. How dare you say a woman on her period is unclean? Well, I mean, bro, how dare you say a man with his seed of copulation is unclean? It's because it's gross.
Yes. So there's sanitation and hygiene here.
Yeah.
And if a woman have an issue, and her issue in her flesh be blood, she shall be put apart 7 days. Mm-hmm. And whosoever toucheth her shall be unclean until the evening.
Mm-hmm.
But this was probably promoted social cohesion and mental health. See you in 7 days, sweetie. And everything that she lieth upon in her separation shall be unclean. Everything also that she sitteth upon shall be unclean. And whosoever touches their bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And whosoever touches anything that she sat on shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean unto the evening. And if it be on her bed or on anything whereon she sitteth, when she toucheth it, he shall be unclean unto the evening. And if any man will lie with her at all, and her flowers be upon him. It's very poetic. Her flowers be upon him.
I never thought about it that way.
It didn't. Yeah, we're getting a little Song of Solomon here. If any man lie with her at all, and her flowers be upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and all the bed whereon he lieth shall be unclean. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this kind of, I don't know that I want to read a whole chapter of menstrual cycle stuff, even if it's biblical, but
all right,
it repeats in like manner.
Okay, let's see what else we got. Two goats. This is payment for. Oh, this is an interesting thing. The scapegoat idea. In the book Eternity in Their Hearts, there's actually the concept of the scapegoat was in, I can't remember, so like some Papua New Guinea or someplace like that. They had the scapegoat still like in their folk religion. So it's like, so this book is about all of these different folk religions around the world having these what you'd call Jewish rituals and laws. And it's just very interesting because like even the Shang dynasty, like the first Shang dynasty, they had animal sacrifice. Well, Shang dynasty, Shang-Ti is heavenly emperor. It's the name of God in ancient China, this heavenly emperor. And the Shang dynasty used to very much have what you'd consider Jewish temple sacrifices to Shang-Ti. And then ultimately the Shang dynasty decided, you know what? You guys aren't worthy of worshiping God. Only the emperor and his family can worship God. You have to worship us. That's when Confucius came in, because there was this spiritual gap where it's like the people were not allowed to worship God. So Confucius came in and kind of filled that God-shaped hole. Excuse me. Anyway,
what's interesting, pre-Moses, and I wouldn't even call these people the Jews. I think that's actually semantically incorrect. The Israelites, yeah, because I don't think you really see references to anything, the forebearer of the word Jew until you get to Judea, right?
Right.
But thinking about how man worshiped God prior to Moses, direct prayer and sacrifice, there might have been some oral tradition passed down by Adam and
by Noah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's like it's not like Abraham was the only dude on earth who worshipped God. Right? He was only singled out in order to create this this authoritative timeline and family line in order to bring about the Messiah.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Melchizedek, and whoever you think he was a guy who worshipped God correctly, right?
Yes.
And so all these other that's why this book Eternity in the Hearts is like it's crazy, because it's like all around the world, all these different people around the world whose folk religions, if you go back far enough, you'll find that they have so much correlation with how God wanted to be worshipped. It's like that, and it was, oh my gosh, you've seen the Chinese pictographs that don't make any sense unless you
for the flood
the story of Genesis, right?
Yeah.
Ancient Chinese monotheistic religion stream when? I mean, we don't have to go through all of Leviticus. We can get into.
And I'm because we did a show on this once, and I'm trying to remember the pictograph. Isn't there a pictograph that looks like the ark?
It doesn't look like the ark. It's the word for ark or ship or something like that is like a vessel with 8 people in it. So it's like 8. Why 8? Well, because there was 8 people in the ark. Why is the word for temptation a pictogram of a woman, a tree, and a serpent? Stuff like that. I can grab it. It's very interesting stuff. If you want, we can move on from I mean, I was just my point about Leviticus is, like I said, this medical foreknowledge is one of the key issues. Medical foreknowledge, scientific foreknowledge, and straight up prophecy are the 3 things that convinced me that this book was written from outside of the human experience.
Leviticus has a specification for treating a house that has a mold infestation or a fungal infestation, and it's actually pretty sound.
What is it? Where is it?
Hang on a second. I'll tell it to you in just 1 second. Let's see. Because I remember one class I went to, Leviticus 14. 14, I think, starting around 33. I'll let you get there. So if you want to talk about foreknowledge,
wife brought me some meat and an ant.
Yeah, here we go. And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, when you be come into the land of Canaan, which I give to you for possession, and I put the plague of leprosy in the house of the land of your possession, and he that owneth the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, it seems to me that there, as it were, a plague in the house. Then the priest shall command that they empty the house, and before the priest go into it to see the plague, that all that is in the house be not made unclean, and afterward the priest shall go in and see the house. And he shall look on the plague, and behold, if the plague be in the walls of the house with hollow streaks, greenish or reddish, which in sight are lower than the wall, then the priest shall go out to the house, to the door of the house, and shut up the house 7 days. And the priest shall come again on the 7th day, and shall look, and behold, if the plague be spread in the walls of the house. Then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which the plague is, and they shall cast them into an unclean place without the city. And he that shall cause the house to be scraped within around it, and they shall pour out the dust that they scrape off without the city into an unclean place. And they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones. And he shall take other mortar and shall plaster the house. And if the plague come again and break out in the house, after that he has taken away the stones, and after he hath scraped the house, and after it is plastered, then the priest shall come back and look, and behold, if the plague be spread in the house, it is a fretting leprosy in the house. It is unclean. Now here, this is not a literal leprosy. What he's describing is mold.
Yeah.
And given that they didn't have bleach, and at best would have had like lye soaps and stuff to clean with, or like ash and water, you take out what's contaminated. You put it in a place apart from the city so it doesn't get reused, right?
That's dump.
Yeah. So that somebody doesn't come and say, "Oh, I'll use these stones in a house I'm building."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's actually a pretty sound protocol.
Yeah, and like I was saying, that's how they ended the Black Plague, right? They went to Leviticus and they're like, "Oh, you mean we shouldn't be storing these dead people in the living rooms of the living people that they're living with? We should be taking these bodies outside of the city and quarantining them." It's like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't a Israelite priest who came into contact with a corpse was considered unclean and ritually unclean. And one of the components of that is in that environment, if someone died of some sort of infectious disease in those temperatures, that corpse would certainly be infectious, and you wouldn't want somebody who has to interact with a lot of people to expose himself to that.
Mm-hmm. And that's the basic thing. It's like these are rules and they're laws and they're quote unquote religious, but really they're just advanced knowledge, right? It's like nobody else knew this stuff in the world. They didn't know this stuff in the Middle Ages because they weren't reading their Bible, right? They weren't Jewish enough. And that's probably why I bet you if you go and you look back, like who was less affected by like Black Plague and that kind of stuff, it's probably the Jewish populations, which probably made the non-Jewish population think that they were the cause, or that they were, that could have been some of the stuff that caused anti-Semitism. Was like how come the Solomons aren't getting sick? It's like, well, because they read their Leviticus.
Well, yeah, if you look in the Mishnah, if you're looking at beyond the things you see in the Leviticus, the Levitical instructions, if you look in the Mishnah, in the Old Torah, they're supposed to wash their hands when they rise. They're supposed to wash their hands before they eat, before they did. There's a lot of hand washing in Judaism. Quite every time you go to the bathroom, before you go, after you go. Interesting though, I was reading in the Mishnah, or was it the Mishnah, or was it the commentary from the Rambam? Anyway, but you're not supposed to contemplate the Torah while in the privy. Yeah.
All right then.
So you wouldn't have religious reading literature. It might be all right to have the Reader's Digest in there, but not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike, I'm gonna need to say goodbye to you, sir. But I think you've got it from here.
All right, buddy.
All right. Thanks, man.
For popping in.
Yep.
Mendraza 24 says these laws are signs of God's care, provision, and protection for his people, so distinct from the ancient world. The Jewish people would have been a shining light to the rest of the world, showing how God is greater than all the false idols. Yeah. Jake says, that's interesting. Isn't it, though? Isn't it? And yeah, it's like learning all of this stuff. This is what brought me to the conclusion again that the Bible was written from outside of human experience. You can say it written from outside of time and space. That's what I like to say because it's kind of fancy. But, and then that conclusion is what led me to accepting Christ as my Savior. So that's why this stuff is important to me. I'm sorry, my wife brought me food while I'm streaming because she loves me. She doesn't want me to wither away. But but this stuff is too chewy to be eating on stream. At least while someone else isn't talking. I mean, but let me find, let me stop this real quick. I want to find this, actually it's on, let's do the YouTube version so I can like play it and you guys can, not hear me chew. In language, Genesis, let me see. Okay, this is let me make sure I am presenting share screen, entire screen, also share audio, share. All right. Now, this is in Chinese.
The Chinese race is the largest ethnic group with 1/5 of the world's population.
This is actually really long, so I'm not going to play the whole thing, obviously.
Chinese than any other language in the world. It is also the most commonly used language.
Hold on, let me get to the part where they actually start showing.
The king that lives above the Most High God.
华人却把这位神称之为上帝，是一位君王，在万物之上，居在天上的。
Some of them call him as 天 or as 上天。
也有人把他直接称之为天了。
Now you notice how you write the word 天？
你注意天怎么写
？Everything that is big, that is star, he's bigger than them. He's the Most High.
在天下至大之上最高的那个就是至高神。
So the Old Testament calls him the Most High God.
所以旧约里面称他为至高神。
Let's give the Most High God a big clap.
为他热烈的
Hallelujah.
拍掌，哈利路亚。
China's greatest historian was a man by the name of Sima Qian.
在中国当中有一个非常了不起的史学家叫司马迁。
In his classic historical records, he recorded of a king called Huang Di or the Yellow Emperor.
而在他流传千古的著作《史记》当中，记载了第一个人叫黄帝。
Now, Huang Di is supposed to be the originator of all Han people, Han Chinese.
黄帝基本上是所有汉族人的始祖。
He lived around 2400 BC to 2500 BC. That means right from the beginning.
他所居住的时代大概是公元前2400到2500年，在最开头的时候。
And Sima Qian recorded that Huang Di actually built an altar in Taishan, which is the mountain in Shantung province, to worship Shangdi God, the one supreme God.
司马迁记载，黄帝特别到了中国山东的泰山，在那里为上帝这位神筑了一座坛，崇拜他。
Sima Qian also recorded in his historical records a comment by a Han Dynasty scholar.
而司马迁在《史记》当中，同时也记载汉代另外一位史学家的记录。
Well, the Chinese, I'm going to ask Lu to read what was written.
这位史学家郑玄他写的中文是说：“上帝者，天之别名也，神无二主。”
In other words, Shangdi is another name for Tian.
上帝就是天的另外一个名字。
And he says this: the spirits do not have two lords. In other words, the Lord your God is one.
他讲得很清楚，只有独一真神，没有两个主。
Again, it confirms exactly what the Old Testament says.
再一次又印证我们旧约所教导的。
Now, there is also a song found in the collected statutes of the Ming Dynasty.
另外，在大明会典当中，有一首收集到的当时的歌谣。
I am not even going to attempt to try to read the 文言文.
哇，读这个文言文大概会昏倒的。
But Lulu is able to do it, so let's.
露露可以为大家念出来。这边这个歌谣他说。 鱼袭洪荒之初兮，浑蒙；五行未立兮，两曜未明。其中挺立兮，有无容身。神皇出狱兮，始探浊清。立天立地人兮，群物生生。
Now let me translate it for you.
这个要为大家解释一下了。
Of the old in the beginning, there was a great chaos without form and dark.
在创造之初，一切是混沌灰暗的。
The 5 planets have not begun to revolve, nor the 2 lights to shine.
5颗行星尚未运转，那2个光体也未照亮。
In the midst of it, there existed neither form nor sound.
在这当中既无声响也无形体。
You, O spiritual sovereign, came forth in your sovereignty and first did separate the impure from the pure.
而主权之神啊，唯有你出来判断所有清浊之分。
Now notice the order. You make heaven, you make earth, you make man. All things became alive with reproducing power.
注意它的顺序哦，你立了天，立了地，创造人，使这一切万物生生不息。
Turn your Bible with me to Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1.
跟我一起翻开创世纪第1章第1节。
Doesn't this commentary sound exactly like the book of Genesis?
哎，这里是不是就像为创世纪写了注释一样？
It says in verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth.
第1节说，起初神创造天地，
The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep.
地是空虚混沌，渊面黑暗，
And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters.
神的灵运行在水面上。
And then it says God separated light from darkness and the land from the waters.
之后，神将光与暗分开，水与地分开。
And he created trees and plants,
他创造了树木、采蔬，
fish and birds and beasts of the field. And then he created man.
有鱼有鸟，田间的野兽。之后，他创造人
And。Genesis 1 says all were given reproducing power to produce after their own kind.
而创世纪告诉我们，每一个都有生育的能力，照他们各从其类的生产。
Can you see long before all this worship came in,
你看到，早在这些拜偶像的事情之前，
long before Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism,
早在这些道教、儒教、佛教之前，
before there were temples that were full of idols for you to worship.
在那些有很多庙宇、那些偶像拜敬之
For
前，
2,000 over years, the Chinese people worship a singular supreme sovereign God who is the creator of heaven and earth, and his name is Shangti,
中国人在2000多年一直在敬拜是一位独一有至高主权的神，他的名叫
who
上
has
帝
the，same nature, character, and power of Jehovah Yahweh God of the Old Testament.
而他的本
I do want to pause for that for a second. His name isn't Shang-Ti. Shang-Ti literally means heavenly emperor. So when you're saying the name Shang-Ti, you're saying a title. You're not saying a name. It's like God. God isn't a title. I mean, God isn't a name. God is a title, right? Lord of Hosts, or one of the other quote unquote names. I guess you could say it's a name for God, but it's the title of, it's the position of who you're talking about. The heavenly emperor is Shang-Ti, which is God, which is also Yahweh. I love this thing, but it is an hour long, and I probably shouldn't just crib the whole thing, right? Should I? Can I? What do you think? I don't mind watching this again, but if you guys think it's a bit much, then we can just back out. I'll just play a little bit more because he hasn't even gotten into all the pictograms written in the Chinese. See here, Chinese is the oldest written language on earth. It goes all the way back to the Tower of Babel. And the thing is that its original form, it is pictograms, right? So you're trying to express, like a cup, you draw a cup, and a man, you draw a little man. But there are concepts in Chinese, in every language, right? There's concepts. And how do you draw a picture of a concept? You draw a comic strip. It's like you draw a little picture of what's happening. It's like I said before, temptation is a woman, a tree, and a serpent. And if you understand the story of Genesis, if that's like ubiquitous, everybody understands the story of Genesis. Why? Because they all just came from the Tower of Babel, and everybody knew who God was, and everybody knew the story of Genesis because it was a shared history with all the people on earth. And you're trying to express this story in a pictogram to create a single word with a small group of pictures. Temptation, Eve, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the serpent, right? That's how you get to that. But let's play a little bit more of this. I don't want to play the whole thing, but I will put the link. I'll try to put the link in the description.
性品格与能力跟我们旧约的亚卫上帝是一样的。
Now, nobody knows when Chinese writing was originated.
没有人知道中文的文字起源在哪里，
But most people agree Chinese writing came about probably in 2500 BC.
可是大部分人都同意，
Which
大概
is
公元前
roughly around the
2500年就有了中国的文字了。
So centuries before the Egyptians built the pyramids, you have the Chinese writing.
所以在埃及人还没盖金字塔好几个世纪之前，中国人就开始写字。
And with Chinese writing, with the ability to write, that means you can document history.
在中国人能够有文字写下来，代表你可以记载历史了。
Now, this is very interesting
这就很有意思啦。
because from the time they were able to document history, there were several global events that everybody could remember.
在他们能够有能力记载历史的时候，有一些全球性的事件是大家通通记得的。
During the same time as 2500 BC,
就大概在公元前2500年那样的时代里，
you have the flood.
在这之前有洪水，
You have the Tower of Babel.
在那时候有巴别塔。
Now, what other events were there that people possibly, if they were alive, and if those events were true, they could remember?
而在那个时代还活着的人，还有什么样的事情是人家永远不会忘记的呢？
Now, I mean, wouldn't you agree? If there's a flood that covers the whole earth,
Now he's just
then
saying all
you
the stuff I
definitely will
said.
remember.
如果一个全世界的大洪水，你大概一定都会记得
Maybe I
吧
should？just give
If there
you
is a
guys
Tower
the
of
link to
Babel that
this
caused
and you can
people to
watch
be
it yourself.
scattered everywhere and languages to come from, surely you remember.
如果巴别塔使得人们四散到各处，语言变乱了，你一定会记得啊。
Now, if those events were true,
如果这些事件是真实的，
and that the Bible is not a fable,
圣经不是随便的神话故事，
then the people that are alive around 2500 BC, they must remember the creation story.
那在公元2500年的人，他们也不会忘记创造的故事，
Because Adam was alive 1,600 years before.
因为在1600年前，亚当还活在世上哎。
You see, when the flood came, Methuselah just died.
你要了解，是在马土撒拉刚死的时候，洪水降临。
And when Methuselah was alive, Adam was also alive.
当马土撒拉在世的时候，亚当也还活在世上哦。
In those days, the people lived a long time.
那个年代的人活得很长寿的，
Adam lived 900 years.
亚当活了900多年，
Methuselah 969 years.
马土撒拉活了969年。
In fact, it was only 8 generations from creation to the flood.
实际上，从创造到洪水才8个世代而已。
So if these things were true,
如果这些都是真实的，
then people alive must surely remember them.
当时存活的人也一定记得它才对啊
And，surely they want to document down in their historical records.
也想在他们的历史当中记载下这一切。
Now, Chinese writings are unique because somehow they have this ability to capture Chinese history.
华文的文字之所以特别，是它可以有这个能力记载历史的。
Because they don't use letters, they use characters in picture form.
因为华文不是用字母拼组在一起，
Pictograms
而是用形态显出来的
So。every Chinese word not only expresses a meaning, it captures a history.
因此，每一个华文字不但是表达意思，还能够带出历史来。
Every character tells a story.
每一个文字可以讲一篇故事。
So if all these things had happened,
如果这一切都曾经发生过，
and that the Chinese people were the descendants of the Tower of Babel,
而华人也是在巴别塔之后散出来的百姓，
they were the descendants of Noah.
他们是挪亚的后裔的话，
Surely they want to record all these global cataclysmic events.
当然他们要记载下这种全球灾难性的事件在。
And for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to show you that all these global events were documented in Chinese history.
接下来20分钟，我让你看见所有全球事件都记载在华文历史
Come
里
on, let's
面。
give the Lord a big hand.
为之
Oh, the amazing part is that they're documented in Chinese history, but they're documented in the language, and the language persists to this day. So it's like it's this history that they're all writing, and even though most Chinese people have no idea, or Japanese use the same language too, or the same written language, but they don't realize it. They don't realize it. I showed this stuff to my mom, and I mean, I wish she was more conducive to believing. But I was like, what does this, and this, what does that mean? And she knew, she got it, she understood, but I don't think she doesn't understand the story of Genesis, so she doesn't see that anyways, I think this is a great way to I think he's probably reaching a lot of Chinese people because it's in their language. It's in their language. They are the people who know and understand and read and write Chinese language today are transmitting this truth day by day, even if they didn't even know it.
热烈的拍掌。
Verse 26.
我们
Let's
来
start
看
there.
创世纪1章26节，这里开始。
It says, Genesis 1:26.
创世纪1章26节，
Then God said, "Let us make man in our image."
神说让
Yeah,
造
let's。get to the
Create
right.
in Chinese is the word 造.
中文的造就是这个创造的造字。
Now, notice how you write this word.
注意到这个字怎么写啊？
All right? This word is written this way.
这个字的写法是这样子：
There was speaking, words.
首先有说话的告，
And as words was spoken, movement happens.
当这宣告说出，就有行动产生了。
So, 走字旁 over words.
所以在这个告旁边是一个走字边，
And isn't it true when God spoke the word, living thing began to move?
不是这样吗？神一说话就开始活物出来了。
So right from the word create, you know that the creation story was recorded there.
从第一个创造的造字，你就看见创造的故事在里面。
And look at verse 22.
你看22节这里，
And God blessed them and
Sure.
saying, be fruitful and multiply.
神就赐福给他们，让他们生养众多。
Now, we all Chinese, we love this word bless.
所有华人都很爱这个字福。
Chinese New Year, we see this everywhere.
农历年到处都看到这个字儿。
You know, and sometimes we have this word pasted on our doors and our businesses because this word means good fortune.
不管是家门口、公司门口都贴这个字，为什么？福气就是好运呢。
Yeah, and we want good fortune to come to our families and come to our workplace.
希望福气好运能够到我们的家里面，到公司里来
And。sometimes we write it, we turn it upside down.
有的时候故意倒着贴这个字儿，
That means the blessings to flow.
代表这个福到了。
But what is prosperity in its original meaning to the Chinese?
可是对华人来说，福原本的意思是什么？
How do you write 福？
福这个字怎么写的？
Now watch, it is 神字旁, it is God.
你看到旁边这个士字旁是神的意思，
Together at one with a mouth.
有一口代表一个人的单位，
So God together with a soul, one mouth
代表神跟一个人、一个灵魂在一起，
in a garden.
在田园里，
So that is prosperity.
这叫福分呢。
Prosperity to ancient Chinese is not just material wealth and money,
对古代华人来说，福分不光是金钱物质而已，
but it's for God and man to have a one relationship in a fruitful garden, in your fruitful family, or in your workplace.
是神跟人有美好的关系，在美好的园子、你的公司、你的家庭的
Turn to your neighbor and say, God,
赐福于你。
then the Lord took them.
安置在伊甸。中文园这个字怎么写呢？
Look at the screen. Is this word yuan? Everybody say yuan.
园，
Now notice. Watch, everybody.
每一个人仔细看呢。
God took clay to,
神拿了尘土起来，
he breathed with his mouth
用口吹气进去，
on two people. One is a man,
两个人身上，一个是一个人呐，男人。
out of his side came forth a woman
从他身旁出来了女人，
and put them in a garden.
把他们放在这个范围里，
That's how you get a word garden.
这就是园啦。
Derek is getting excited, although he's not Chinese.
德瑞不
And saying, a bit of it.
I'm gonna just try to skip here
Now,
to
to
get to the
to
part where
forbid
they're
in China-
writing.
God gave them, God put them in a garden. You have trees.
神给他们放在园子里面有这个树林在，
He gave them a revelation. 启示的
还把
启的
启示告诉他们这个柿子。
是 God gave them revelation about the tree.
神给他们这树木的启示，
Don't you eat it.
不要吃哦，
If you eat it, you will die.
一吃的话必定死。
Why were there two trees?
为什么放2棵树呢？
Because there was a
Two
tree of
trees?
life and a
Yeah.
tree of knowledge of good and evil.
因为有生命之树，还有分别
I feel
善恶
like I
的树
shouldn't。even comment
All right.
because he's gonna
Now-
everything I say he says
Well-
right after I say it.
Genesis chapter 3, verse 1 now.
现在到第3章第1节这里了，
Here came the problem.
这里有问题了。
Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God hath made. The woman.
魔鬼来是中文魔，
Now, how do you write the word more?
魔这个字怎么写呢？
All right. There was a garden.
这边有个园子，
And then there was a movement.
哗，有一个行动一撇在那儿，
One guy came to man,
他来找人了，那个儿子
secretly.
私下的
This is the word.
私，
Si means secret.
这个私就是秘密的意思，
So this word 鬼 means devil.
这个就是魔鬼那个鬼字啦。
Also, it means suspicious. 鬼鬼祟祟.
中文也讲鬼鬼祟祟的，
He came in.
他进来
Slow movement.
慢动作，
Where did he come?
他到哪儿去？
He came to the among the trees.
他是在树林当中来的。
Jake says these aren't even history, it's just how their words are written. Right. Their words are written as pictographs. In other words, they create stories. The pictograph creates a story that you have to understand. Essentially, you have to understand the meaning or the stories in the book of Genesis to understand why these pictographs mean what they mean. The story of Genesis is hidden in the Chinese language.
Undercover.
在灵隐之下，
He came as a tempter.
他来引诱人了。
Let's go back.
Undercover.
Sure.
Where did he come?
他到哪儿去？
He came to the among the trees.
他是在树林当中来的，
Undercover.
在灵隐之下，
He came as a tempter.
他来引诱人了。哑巴，
Got greedy for it. Or the 贪婪的婪.
这个贪婪的婪字怎么写的呢？
Notice it's again those three over a woman.
注意到这2棵树在这个女人之上哦，
Because the woman fell into sin first.
因为第一次出现贪婪就是女人掉入罪中，
All right, now temptation is always tough. Yes. Over a boundary.
是不是把个木圈在这个框框里头呢？
You don't touch this tree.
不要碰这棵树啊，
Oh, very difficult 很辛苦啊。
很困难啊。
我要。Well, Eve fell into sin and then Adam too.
试探带下的亚当他们掉到罪里面了，
And the result of the temptation was sin or 罪。
试探带下的结果就是这个罪字。
Now, the ancient form of 罪, I'm going to write for you. The ancient form.
你要了解罪的古字不是长这样，
All right, I'm now an expert in ancient Chinese.
我现在是古文的专家了，
Okay.
看起来很古的样子哈。
Now, this one, sin, this 罪 the ancient form
这是中国古文的罪字，
is actually a man 人 with his nose.
实际上
It's the
这
nose
个
of a
上
man.
头啊是自我的字，是人的鼻子，
And he feels very bitter, very 辛苦.
而下面是一个辛苦的辛字，
So this was the original meaning of the word 罪.
这是最原来的样子哦。
But when Qin Shi Huang came along, he united China in 221 BC.
可是大概在2100多年时候，秦始皇出现，整合整个中国，
This is the man that built the Great Wall of China.
就这个人建了中国的长城，
And he changed this word.
他把这个字给改了，
From this word, he changed it to this, for, against.
他把这个字改成四个非这个罪字
You，see, this is the word for, and this is the word against.
所以你看见上面是个四，下头是一个非。
Now, Qin Shi Huang was not a Christian.
秦始皇不是基督徒哦，
But by the way, not every emperor was a non-believer. There were many emperors who were believers of God.
可是要先澄清啊，不是每一个皇帝都是不信主的，好些皇帝是认识耶稣的。
I'm going to talk about it more.
这个呢，我会更多的讲到。
But although Qin Shi Huang was not a Christian, but he was moved by God.
虽然秦始皇不是基督徒，但神同样可以感动他。
Why was the 罪 written as for against?
为什么？
For
所以这个字
opposition
是四个非放在一块儿。
You know, this just reminds me of there's a Cliff Connectley video where there's this black student from Africa, and he's just schooling this white liberal student about how, you know, she's saying that the only reason Christianity is in Africa is because of the white Europeans who brought it there, and the black dude's like, Christianity was in Africa before the Europeans were. And this just reminds me of that, because it's like we have to bring Christianity, we have to bring the Bible back to the Chinese people. But belief in God, belief in the one true God, and the story of Genesis predates it predates everything. It's the longest, you know, it predates the Abraham by how many years was it? Like 1,000 years. All of this stuff predates Abraham by like 1,000 years. So it's like it was one of the things in eternity in their hearts. They've lost their beliefs over time and because of all the different situations and communism and blah, blah, blah. Just a very, very long history in China, 4,500 years. But yeah, I bet you look at their Chinese roots, they match up with the Bible. That's what this is demonstrating, Mendraza. And the great thing is that they still use these words today, so you can't deny that it's there. And they've got pottery dating all the way back like 4,500 years ago, so you can't deny that stuff either. It's all like point blank, black and white, and it only makes sense if you understand the book of Genesis and you understand that humankind had a shared history, and that when honestly, this is how I think it was sort of derived, is that their written language starts so soon after the Tower of Babel, when nobody could understand each other, that I speculate, pure speculation on my part, I speculate that they started communicating with pictures before they started developing a common language. Because if you don't know how to talk to somebody else, you have no clue, because all languages are confused. You can draw pictures. Afar is based on this whole concept that I can draw pictures and tell the story of the Gospels without words, and everybody on earth can understand it. I believe that is very similar to how the Chinese language was created, and why the stories and the histories, the shared histories with all of mankind at that time, were necessary to get concepts across.
Or four contradictions.
四个似是而非，
Because do you know there were four contradictions here in Genesis chapter 3?
因为在创世第3章就有四个似是而非之
Look at
处。
verse 1.
你看第1节，
The devil says, Has God indeed said you shall not eat of every tree of the garden?
魔鬼说：“神岂是真说这跟神的不说的？
Second contradiction.
你们
Surely the third
非第5日，希望你
to the first sin. Right now.
看这样知道，
This it got to do with, now watch, it got to do with your clothing, 一字旁.
注意到跟你穿的衣服有关呢。
Your covering is gone when you eat of the 果子, the fruit.
当你吃那个果子，这个衣服就不见了。
So the first time naked came in, it got to do with covering God because of a fruit, Genesis.
第一次感到赤裸，就创世纪里面讲的，你吃了果子就开始遮蔽自己。
Now look at verse 8.
Neat
你看第8节，
And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God from the trees of the garden.
天起了凉风，耶和华神在园中行走，那人和他妻子听见神的声音，就藏在园里的树木中，躲避耶和华神的面。
Now Adam went into hiding.
亚当去躲起来了。
How do you write this word hide?
躲这个字怎么写的呢？
Now his body, 身体,
他的身子
nai, is
乃
superimposed to the tree.
藏在木头后头了，
So his body is the tree.
他的身子就好像树木一样
In
了。
other words, you can't see him. He's hiding behind the tree.
换句话说，躲在树木后头，你看不到他了。
Man wasn't hiding. Why? He felt the guilt and shame of sin.
人躲起来，为什么？因为他感受到罪的那个羞愧。
How do you write guilt?
这个愧字怎么写呢？
Well, look at the screen.
你看荧幕上头，
Look, it got to do with heart, 心字旁, your
跟
heart.
你的心有关嘛，所以心字旁
And the devil got into your heart.
啊，鬼进到心里去了，
你心里有鬼啊。
有鬼啦。
Now, what happened?
怎么回事？
The devil got into foothold of man's life.
魔鬼在人的
You see how he's going like literally step by step through the entire story of Genesis? I mean, we're only half an hour into this and I'm over an hour. So I'm going to drop the link. I think everybody should go watch this whole thing. But you don't have to watch it with me commenting on it. So putting it here in the chat. If you want to click on that, watch the rest of it. I highly suggest it, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up because we are over an hour. It's a great video. I'll probably just finish watching it again. I've seen it before. And then I'll put it in the description for anybody who wants to check that out later too. So anyways, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us in this Saturday edition of God's Squad. And we'll see you on Monday for the next edition of Cross Examinations. Y'all have a good weekend and a blessed Sunday.